Our next speaker almost needs no introduction. Let me just say that a few years ago, Time magazine had an article about the world's most influential spiritual leaders, and I believe the Pope was third, the Dalai Lama was second, and Deepak Chopra was first. And he's from the Chopra Foundation and UCSD, and he will be speaking on mind, body, and universe as human constructs. Deepak Chopra.
Okay, thanks, Stuart. First of all, I want to thank Stuart and Abhi and Stuart's extraordinary team for putting this together at such a short notice. And Stuart, we have a long relationship. There are periods when we joust with each other about 12 times a day through email. And then there are periods when we don't speak to each other for a few months. But it's been an amazing journey for me to be associated with you and all the people I've met as a result of my association with you. I would have never met extraordinary people. And Dr. Zhu, thank you for your talk. I'm probably going to resonate more with you than many others in this forum. So before I start, I just want to know how many people, I don't want to repeat myself too much, so how many people came to my workshop the other day? Okay, so I can repeat myself a little bit. So about 4 years ago, I did a book which was more about the story of how humans have thought about the nature of reality for almost several thousand years. The book starts with the insights of people like Job in the Old Testament, and then it moves through the insights of Rumi, the Eastern Sufi philosopher. It talks about the insights of some European philosophers. But the book ends with a conversation between Einstein and the great Indian poet Rabindranath Tagore. So I will not go into details of that conversation because it's a very beautiful conversation. If you want to look it up, go on the internet and you'll see it. But fundamentally, Einstein is what science calls a realist. Okay, and that term, by the way, is under a lot of scrutiny right now. Realism, because there are many kinds of realism. Representational realism, orthodox realism, naive realism. So if you want to go again, study that. Everything is on the internet these days. Einstein was a realist, what today some philosophers would call a naive realist. Brilliant scientist, but a naive realist. So a realist is somebody who says that the picture of the world is the look of it. And that's what leads to the hard problem, right? If this is the universe, what's the representation here? Okay, how does this fit as an experience in my brain? All you have in my brain are neural correlates. That's it. And then the opposite, extreme opposite of that was Tagore, whom we would call an idealist, that only ideas structure reality, which goes back all the way to Plato, but even before that, to the sages of the Upanishads and many Eastern philosophers. So when I was doing this book, I was traveling across the country, I was talking about the book, and I happened to land in Los Angeles as part of my book tour, and I was picked up by my then 5-year-old grandson at the airport. And as we got out of the airport, he was then 5 years. He looks at me and he says, Dada, which is the Indian term for grandfather on the father's side. He said, what is dark energy? So it's an interesting question to come from a 5-year-old. And I said, what do you know about dark energy? And he said, it flows through the night sky. Very poetic, metaphorically speaking. I said, what else do you know about it? He said it's 70% of the universe. That's astonishing, coming out from a 5-year-old. We left the airport and we're driving in Santa Monica, and I roll down the window and we can see the ocean and smell the ocean. And he says to me, "How did they make the ocean?" So I said, who make the ocean? He said, "Well, they." I said, "That's not a precise scientific question, even for a 5-year-old. Who do you mean by they?" So I could see him thinking for a little bit, and then he reframed the question. He said, "How did the ocean get made?" So I said, the ocean got made the same way that the earth got made. You know, a giant star exploded, which is not quite accurate, but close to it. And there were fragments, and part of that is the solar system. The earth is part of that, and the oceans are part of that. So then I turned the question to him, and I said, "Do you know how many planets there are in the solar system?" He said, "Well, if you count Pluto, then there are 9, but if you don't count Pluto, it's 8. I'm starting to wonder who this kid is, you know? So I said, "And where did the solar system come from?" And he said, "From the galaxy." I said, "Do you know the name of the galaxy?" He said, "Milky Way." I said, "Where did the galaxy come from?" He said, "From the universe." So then I asked him, "Where did the universe come from?" And he said, "From another dimension." Like that, without batting an eyelid. So now I'm really intrigued. You know, I'm Indian, and some of us believe in reincarnation, and so I'm thinking Galileo, and you know, all these names are coming to me in my mind. I said, "Krishu," his name is Krishan. I said, "Krishu, how do you know all this?" And he said, "It's on my Pokemon." So I share this story with you. Is you want to know what the zeitgeist is, please look up what the kids are finding on video games and on their little Pokemons, etc. But this gives me an opening to what I want to really talk about right now. And that is, if you go on the internet, if you go Google and you ask what are the most open questions in science today, and there are over 125. But in March or sometime in 2007, Science magazine published them, and they've been recycled since then. There are 125 open questions. The first open question is, what is the universe made of? And the second open question is, what's the biological basis of consciousness? And what I hope to share with you is that they're related, okay? That the two questions are kind of woven into the same desire to know what is existence, what is the nature, fundamental nature of reality. And I don't mean anything fancy by that. If you say, what do you mean by existence? I think the simplest answer would be that which exists. We know that this exists, that you exist. And so what is the nature of reality? What is the nature of existence? And the reason we have all these conundrums at these conferences is actually these conferences are really useful because we have so many different points of view. And when you have so many different points of view and you have a conversation about these points of view, then there is what theorists call emergence. So that's another great reason, Stuart, to congratulate you for doing these conferences for such a long time. Because when you have, you have a diversity of opinions. You have a diversity of disciplines, from science to philosophy and mathematics to neuroscience. You have an open forum. Something emerges by itself. And I think we are getting to that point slowly. So the reason the first question is an open question, what is the nature of the universe, is precisely what my grandson learned from Pokemon. 70% of the universe is dark energy. And it's also been referred to as the cosmological constant. But if you really examine, nobody's actually seen this energy. It's a mathematical construct. The cosmological constant is a mathematical construct, so we can explain the space between galaxies moving apart from each other, which is the observation, that the space between galaxies is expanding faster than the speed of light now. And the construct to explain that is the cosmological constant. And as those of you familiar with that will also know that the cosmological constant is off by a magnitude of 1 to the power of 125 orders of magnitude, which means the observed values that explain what the cosmological constant should be is less than the theoretical value by an order of over 125 orders of magnitude, which is a big embarrassment for the what do we call the standard model of physics. Nevertheless, it's a construct so we can accommodate the equations of the standard model. Okay. That's 70% of the universe according to current cosmology. That leaves 30% of the universe, of which 26% is another theoretical construct called dark matter. And the reason it's called dark matter is that it's presumably, we are told, not atomic, not made up of atoms. There's a theoretical particle that people talk about called the WIMP, weakly interactive massive particle. But it's a theoretical particle, right? Nobody's discovered it. And because dark matter is not atomic, we can't see it. It doesn't reflect light, refract light, absorb light, emit light. We are made of atoms. Our interactions with each other are presumably interactions through particles and light and all of that. So it may be not only unknown what this is, it may be unknowable through our current understanding of how we do science. People are looking for it anyway. So that leaves 4% of the universe, which is atomic. Of that, 99.99% is invisible interstellar dust, which we are told is hydrogen and helium, but actually we can't see it and we can't observe it. Okay, so the visible universe, which we are now told, latest accounting, is 2 trillion galaxies. It used to be 100 billion galaxies, but if you go again on the internet, which is where all the information surfaces ultimately, 2 trillion galaxies, 700 sextillion stars, and trillions and uncountable trillions of planets is 0.01% of what's out there. 0.01%. And that doesn't even get close to the problem, because the visible universe, the 0.01% that we do think is out there, is ultimately made of atoms. And atoms have a dual nature, notwithstanding how we explain the collapse of the wave function, whether it's observer, objective reduction, decoherence, multiple worlds, whatever, but atoms have a dual character. They're waves and particles. Nobody questions that. Waves have units of mass and energy, and particles have units of mass and energy, but waves are probabilities in mathematical space. That's all they are. Probabilities exist as mathematical constructs in mathematical space, in so-called Hilbert space. And if you talk to mathematicians, where is Hilbert space? They say it's a wrong question. This has no location. It's the space that houses the wave function. Where is it? Shut up and calculate. Okay, so that's where we are in our understanding of the universe. The best we can say is it's made out of nothing. Nothing observable. which then leads to our second conundrum, which is the hard problem of consciousness, because we know all this because we are conscious beings, right? Without being conscious beings, we would neither have a science, nor would we have mathematics, nor would we have perceptions that we call observations, which makes all this possible. So we are struggling with that. What's the biological basis of consciousness? Not just the collapse of the wave function, which is, yeah, as the wave function collapse, here's a particle, but consciousness is more than that. Consciousness is all experience, mental experience, perceptual experience, its thoughts, its feelings, its emotions, its sensations, its perceptions, and we have no idea how an action potential, which is the common denominator in every experience, whether it's sound or touch or taste or smell, all that goes to your brain is an action potential. All that happens in your brain is neurochemistry. We call neural correlates. But what you experience is this. You experience this. You experience this. How? That's the hard problem, right? That's the hard problem of experience. It's also the hard problem of mental experience. We cannot explain where a thought comes from. We pride ourselves on logic and rationality, which is a great system of thought, but what's the nature of thought itself? Where does it arise? Where is the thought before you have it? Where does it go after you've experienced it? Where is imagination? Where is creativity? Where is insight? Where is intuition? Where is our desire to know this? Oh, we want to know this. Why does the brain, if the brain is the source of consciousness, why does the brain want to know itself? It can't even feel its own pain. As you know that, as an anesthesiologist, you put a knife in the brain, there's no experience. So the brain can't even experience itself. Forget about experiencing this. We have a problem, a huge problem. And those two constructs, those two problems are related. Because consciousness also has no form. So where is consciousness? Right? Here? Where? Here. Oh, it's an activity of all the neurons and whatever theories you have, but where is it? Consciousness has no form. And having no form, it's also made of nothing. So the universe is made of nothing, and consciousness is made of nothing. So of course, then the next thing is, how does nothing become everything? Become this experience. How much time do you have? I'll be very... Okay, so let's take this a little step further, not so much scientifically, but experientially. So let me ask you, sir, what is this? Microphone. Let me ask somebody else. What is this? Anyone? A hand. What's this? Shoe. What do you see outside right now? Yeah, you see the sky, you see flowers, trees, buildings. So here's what I'm suggesting to you. These are all human constructs. Let's say I gave this to a baby who is yet not indoctrinated into the hypnosis of social conditioning, cultural conditioning, scientific conditioning, philosophical conditioning, religious conditioning. I think the baby would just play with it, might try to taste it, smell it, try to even eat it, right? And depending on the experience, maybe throw it away or play with it or swallow it. So fundamental experience is just that. Fundamental experience is sensations, feelings, sense perceptions: sound, touch, sight, taste, smell, and then pleasure and pain, depending on whether this is pleasant or not. There is no thought at this moment, from what we know. Thought occurs when we interpret that experience. So now, mother comes along and she says, you know, that's a watch. You're not supposed to eat that. This is your hand. You are Deepak. You're Indian. You are brought up in the Hindu tradition. And so we start the process of construction based on raw experience. Even the embodiment of the body is a learned phenomenon. This is my body, that's yours. I am here, you're there. But then if you ask somebody, which is everyone's intuitive idea, I'm here. If I ask you, where are you? You'd say, I'm here. And then if I ask you, where in you are you having the experience of seeing me? Just stay with seeing. A lot of people, depending on their training, some will say, it's happening in my eyes. Your eyes are 2.5 centimeters by 2.5 centimeters. By the time light goes through your eyes, it gets inverted through the lens. Your retina is curved. They're 9 centimeters apart. If the experience of seeing me is happening in your eyes, then you should be seeing two of me upside down and curved and 9 centimeters apart, this big. So whatever is happening in your eyes, the experience is not happening in your eyes. At this point, a lot of people, depending again on their training, are saying, it's happening here. In this case, it's happening in the occipital cortex, or I'm hearing sound, it's happening in my auditory cortex. Of course, there's no sound in your auditory cortex. There's no color in your auditory cortex. There's no form in your auditory cortex. So something is happening in your auditory cortex or your visual cortex. But where is this experience happening? The experience includes me, you, all this, and all that outside. So that's a problem, really. I don't fit inside your brain, nor does this room fit inside your brain, nor does the Milky Way galaxy fit inside your brain. But that's the experience. Whatever is happening in your brain, the experience is not happening. Okay, we can name all these correlates and all that. So I'm going to stick to what I promised I would say. Anything that you can give a name to, anything you can give a name to, or anything that you can describe scientifically, philosophically, theologically, in religious terms, but if you can give it a name or you can describe it, it's a construct. Furthermore, it's a human construct. Okay, the dog in Obama's White House, Bo, didn't know he was in the White House. Or Obama was the president of the United States. Are these constructs useful? You bet they are. If I want to meet you at the corner of 56th and Broadway at 12 noon next Tuesday at Serafina Restaurant, I need those constructs. If I want to fly from here to Copenhagen, I need those constructs, right? But Copenhagen is a human construct. The plane is a model of the human construct. What is reality? Reality is that in which we create those constructs. Okay? Reality is that in which we experience knowing and what we call this, for lack of a better word. Reality can only be that which gives us access to modes of knowing, perception, and experience. The constructs are very useful because without those constructs, we wouldn't have what we call human civilization. We wouldn't have cathedrals and temples and hadron colliders and telescopes in the sky, Galileo sky telescope, James Watson telescope. But let's not mistake our constructs for reality. So whether it's a gluon or a quark or a wave function or a particle or a brain or a body or the entire universe of 2 trillion galaxies, these are human constructs for modes of knowing and experience, for lack of a better word, in consciousness. So consciousness can only be the ontological primitive, which is basically, the Eastern worldview. But then we start to argue, is matter the real reality? Is physics giving us access to it? Is theology, is philosophy, etc.? All systems of thought. And where do these systems of thought arise, whether it's science or philosophy or theology or religion? In consciousness. As Max Planck said, you cannot get behind consciousness. So according to the non-dual traditions of the world, and actually even science is now non-dual, right? We say there's only, in our search for the unified field, we are presuming that there's only one reality, and whether it's strong and weak interactions, gravity, electromagnetism, somehow there's something behind all of that, some fundamental reality. So we are in a non-dual state already in both science and philosophy. But what is that non-dual entity that we can experience as mind, body, and what we call universe? But I'll go even further than that. Even mind is a human construct. Mind is a human construct for what we experience as thought, as feeling, as pleasure, as pain. The body is a human construct for perception. How do I feel? No, I have a body, which I told you, the embodiment of the experience of embodiment is a learned phenomenon. So even the body is a construct. All that is a construct. And consciousness is modifying itself into modes of knowing and experience. Even, and Stuart reminded me many years ago, even a paramecium has a knowing, right? This is food and this is toxic. So there's a mode of knowing wherever we go in the whole biological taxonomy. But even biological taxonomy is human construct. What we call evolution of species, I think, is evolution of species of consciousness. Can't be anything else, because this is a human experience. It's not the experience of an insect with 100 eyes. It's not the experience of a bat that knows the world through the echo of ultrasound. It's not the experience of a snake that knows infrared. What does that experience feel like? Who knows? So we give, of course, a privileged position as a species to our constructs and our experience of the universe, and we objectify our perceptions, which are processes in consciousness, and our thoughts and our interpretations and our models, which are all processes in consciousness, we objectify it as this physical universe. And that's useful. We can navigate now. I can meet you in Serafina at the corner of 56th and Broadway on Tuesday, and we can have veggie burgers. So the constructs are useful. Don't get me wrong. But science is also a construct in human consciousness. It's a system of thought, and a great system of thought. So why I say that we are here in this wonderful conference is that we are all discussing systems of thought, and now we want to know what is the source of thought. And once we know that, then we can accommodate all systems of thought. We can make peace. Okay. Science is about the objective world out there. It's a great way of doing stuff. You know, there's me, the observer, and there's that, the observed. But me, the observer, is also an activity of the observed, which means the universe. The subject-object split, as you said very accurately, is artificial. And being artificial, it has its uses, but it also has its problems. Because if we were conscious beings and self-aware beings, we wouldn't make atom bombs, and we wouldn't create climate change, and we wouldn't cause the extinction of species. We wouldn't be risking our own extinction, which we're doing because of the split between me and the universe, when in fact, it's just the universe. And that universe is conceived, constructed, governed, and comes into experience in consciousness. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
That's all he had to say. How about Jonathan? Can you use this?
Thank you, Deepak. That was stimulating. So some people have accused Daniel Dennett in his book Consciousness Explained, where he basically argues that it's all matter and consciousness is sort of an illusion, is consciousness explained away. And it seems like sort of the reverse criticism might be leveled at you of reality explained away by calling it all consciousness. And so I'm wondering, it seems like there is something that we could agree on, which is the intersubjective, where we all seem to be getting different perspectives on it. And that intersubjective seems to be qualitatively distinct from the private subjective that each one of us have. And so why isn't that distinction between the intersubjective and the private subjective a sort of ontologically meaningful distinction that captures the difference between objective reality and subjectivity?
Can I have the microphone or use this? Okay, so it's a really great question. And we have to use words. Is it all matter? Is it all consciousness? I'll use a metaphor right now. So vapor, liquid, solid, and all the statues made of solid, including this, is in essence one substance, whatever we call it. And similarly, in the worldview that I'm expressing, I'm saying that mind, body, universe, is one activity, unified activity in consciousness. Whether we call it matter or consciousness, actually it's a semantic argument, in a sense. What is it that is giving rise to experience? That's it. Because all we have access to is experience, modes of experience, and then interpretations of experience, which some of us call consciousness and others call matter. That's it. All we have is access to experience. Now, you say my private thoughts I can change, but I can't change the regularities of this experience. So what we call natural laws are regularities of experience, basically. That's another way of phrasing them. And moreover, there are regularities of experience in conscious beings. So we have biological rhythms, circadian rhythms, seasonal rhythms, lunar rhythms, gravitational rhythms. It's not just you, a squirrel, a tree, an insect. They all have these same rhythms, right? So it's one unified activity. And it's not a thing, it's an activity. That's the other problem. We said this is a thing, it's an activity. You know, it was a baby, it was whatever. It's a constant arising and subsiding of experience. The other problem is we think consciousness is here, but this is being experienced in consciousness too, as an activity. So consciousness behind everything. Or If you want to call it matter, I have no problems because matter is not material anymore, according to science.
In your last book, You Are the Universe, you talked about the science of qualia. Could you have some explanation of that?
Yeah, now, David Chopra has created this whole conversation about qualia at one of your conferences and made history. And there is a subtle distinction in how people argue about qualia. So I would say qualia is quality of experience, whether it's the taste of red wine or the color red or this experience. So what do we mean by qualia? Sense perceptions, sensations, images, feelings, thoughts. If you put all together as qualia, then now we have the raw materials of experience. And in my book, I have outlined 40 principles, which I call qualia science. So, the many of the healing sciences like Ayurveda, energy medicine, Reiki, Qi, these are all qualia sciences.
First, thanks for this experience that you gave to us. As you said, it's difficult to use words for explaining concepts. So my question is through a little tales, because it's difficult for me to explain with words. The tales is that I am in love with that girl.
You are?
In love with that girl, invisible.
Yeah.
But I am ashamed, so I am afraid to ask her something. And then I call Stuart, Penrose, everyone. I pay them. And please tell me if she loves me. But then comes you, or an Eastern old woman, and say, kiss her, kiss her. And I say, no, they are still working on my heart problem. Kiss her, kiss her. No, they're working. And then, okay, I kiss her. And we stay together. And after 1 year, this girl, let's call her Conchi girl, tell me, I was not interested in you. I didn't take care of you. But at the time that you kiss me, I'm open to you. This is my question.
It's beautiful. So what you're saying is a kiss is much more powerful than a measurement. That's all what you're saying. And you're absolutely right. But I think you need to go one step further. The girl is you in disguise. Okay, she's a reflection of you in disguise. She just has another appearance. And the you is, again, you said very well, and I think you quoted Schrödinger or others, and Schrödinger said, you can't multiply or divide consciousness. Okay? And I think the best response to you is Rumi, who said, God's language is silence, everything else is poor translation. So I'll do one experiment very quickly. It's a non-dual experiment that works for people who have never practiced meditation. I'm just going to ask you a question, and just say yes, please, okay? And the question is, are you aware? A little more enthusiasm. Are you aware? Yes. Okay, now I'm going to ask you the same question, but don't answer it till I raise my hand. Are you aware? So are you aware is a thought? Yes is a thought. In between is awareness. Awareness is in which all experience occurs, whether it's thought, perceptions, whatever. Okay? And awareness is not in time. Only the experience is in time. So I'm going to ask you the same question. Don't answer it. Just slip into it. Are you aware? It's a presence in which experience happens. The experience is in time. Awareness is not in time. Giving Betsy exercise.
Hi, Deepak. It seems like you're hypothesizing that we individually, we are, when you say you are the universe, that an individual is a universe constructing the perception, but the other fact is that there are multiple conscious entities, as you point out, even of different species. How do you account for the fact that there's correlation between the constructions? The word construction implies that there's an arbitrariness, You know, they could have been different, but how do you go about accounting for the fact that there are correlations in the way all these various consciousnesses that are present construct the universe around them?
Okay. When you say individual, I should just say one thing. There's no such thing as an individual. Just get rid of the idea that there's a person. There's no person. A person is also a process in consciousness. Okay, so that's the first thing. So when I say you are the universe, I don't mean you. I mean that in which you is an experience right now, which is the ontological you. Okay, it's common to all. It's everybody's, no one's property. Okay, it's just non-local, formless being, awareness, existence. Now you say, how come we share the experience? As humans we do, but not other species. I don't know what their experience is. And yet there's a leaking of experience. You know, you can have a relationship with your dog and having no idea what the dog is experiencing. What is that relationship? It's, for lack of a better word, it's love, respect, whatever. But there's no conceptual idea for me what that dog or that kitten is experiencing other than we are having an exchange in consciousness. Okay. As for how come we came up with this similar constructs, ask Noam Chomsky, don't ask me. How did language come into existence and how come? And it's an unanswerable question. It's the same question as how did life come into existence? At the moment, it's unanswerable. Language is about, depending on who you ask, is 30,000 years max, but written language is only 5,000 years, and oral language could be 20,000 years. How many people read the book Sapiens? Anybody here in the audience? Okay, so I recommend it highly. Sapiens, written by Yuval Harari, who's a deep historian, and he's also a cultural anthropologist. He's from Oxford, gives him good credentials, and he's Israeli. And he says that up until about 30,000 years ago, there were 8 different types of humans. So, you know, we call ourselves Homo sapiens, which is a name we gave to ourselves, but it's a good name, the wise ones. Then there was Homo erectus, Homo florensis, Homo neanderthalis, and all that. And he says, and you know, he gives pretty good documentation for his arguments, that there were 8 different types of humans, the human family, but different species, like a cat and a lion and a tiger and a panther and a cheetah are the same family, but they're totally different species. They don't mate with each other. Okay, so like that, there were 8 human species, but one human family. And they had a very primitive language, which was just danger calls and mating calls. Then one species, why? We don't know, us. We created a language first for gossip. So-and-so sleeping with so-and-so, so-and-so can't be trusted, so-and-so's good, so-and-so's bad, and then we created a language with stories and constructs. And what he says, he doesn't use the word constructs, he says stories. He said the pack, the human pack, a leader in the human pack could never get more than 100 people to follow him. And it was a him, because hunter-gatherers had to go hunt and fight, so it was man, human male species. They could never get more than 100 people to follow them, till humans started telling stories. And so it was not 100, it was thousands. We had kings, we had empires, we had money, we had commerce, we had monarchs, we had civilization, because we were storytellers. And today's story is the scientific story, and it works, right? It works. This is working right now. The plane works. Doesn't mean it tells us what the truth is. The truth is, where do we create the story? Where is the source of that story? Where he says, as soon as humans started telling stories, they created commerce, they created money, they created kingdoms, they created nation states, they created tribes, they created everything that we call reality. And suddenly the leader could have millions of followers. You can't, in his book, he says, you cannot convince a monkey to give up its banana with the promise that it'll get 1 million bananas in monkey heaven. But you can do it with a human being. So the more outrageous the story, the greater the power.
One more question there, right there.
Right next to it?
Hi. This should be pretty quick. I read your pamphlet and I really enjoyed it, and it surprised me that I agreed with all you had to say in the beginning. And I noticed that number 17, you made the ontological leap of saying, where does this all come from? And took the full idealist stance that it's subjectivity that's relating to absolute subjectivity. And I was wondering if that point could go the other way, that it could be subjectivity that's relating to matter, at least matter in the sense of quantum potentials. Quantum potentials could also account for mind.
Quantum potentials are constructs in human consciousness.
Well, as far as language goes, yes, but if some people postulate that there is a world of potential out there, potential matter, which must be
and
observed.
you can use it to create technology.
Yes, but I wasn't quite finished. That it might be like a kind of dual aspect monism, in which the physical has a basic kind of reality along with the mind, but that reality is in potential.
Okay, I'll simply give you one sentence, and maybe you can think about it. If you can see it, if you can touch it, if you can think about it, if you can imagine it, if you can conceptualize it, it's not real. What is real is that without which you cannot think, imagine, conceptualize, see, perceive, or have any experience. And that's a problem when matter is our ontological primitive, because consciousness has no form. So having no form, it can only be non-local, and then you can bring in all these quantum potentials in that non-local, quantum entangled reality.
But no one can conceive of a quantum potential.
No one?
No one can conceive of it. We can name it, but we can't pick it.
Yeah, you can mathematically conceive it.
Separation of space-time.
Okay, thanks.